What's up, everybody? My name is Michael, or Kiratze Online. Hopefully you guys are having a great day as usual, and also Happy New Year. Hopefully you guys had to spend some great times with your friends and family. I myself spent a weekend and some in Edmonton with my family. Sadly, my sister and I got pretty sick near the end of the trip, and I am actually still a little bit sick. You can probably tell from my voice, so I apologize if I do sniffle a little bit, but my nose is cleared up enough where I can make this video, because I was still sick today, and I was like, well, let's the new season started in Eternal, so I was like, well, let's just do a draft and see what happens, because again, I'm not normally a great drafter, but I ended up going 7-1, and this is my very first 7-1. Normally I go 7-2 with my 7 wins, so it was awesome. Great way to start the new year and the new season off in Eternal. But this is another 7-win deck discussion, if that wasn't obvious enough. And I like to do these because I think it helps newer players get an inside look on what a 7-win deck might look like, and also can potentially pick up some little tricks here and there in terms of drafting and stuff like that. Now, sadly, this was after I claimed my rewards, so this is an imported version of my draft deck, so I can't show you guys my card pool. All you guys need to know is I drafted some pretty good time cards and stone scar cards, or red cards early on, as well as some stone scar cards, because I saw a couple of combusts and stuff like that, but I ended up moving into Feln because I ended up with some better primal cards, and Feln, no surprise that I'm getting 7 wins with this one. I think Feln is the best colors to go into in draft. It's one of those consistent colors. I think if you can find some extremely good colors in other some other good combinations in other colors with some big bombs, then you may want to move into those colors. But overall, I think you're usually pretty safe with Feln because there's a lot of crazy good commons, which makes it a pretty consistent color combination to go into. So that's one thing to think about. Again, think about, for the new players, definitely want to start thinking about your strategy early on. I usually, bar the first 5 or 6 packs, I usually just pick the best cards, or the cards that I like the most. Doesn't matter what color they're in. If they're in the colors that I want, even better. But overall, you really just want to keep yourself open so you can start reading and seeing what colors are actually open for you to start drafting into. Like my first pick was Horizon's Disciple, which is in time. I think I got a really good red card for my second pick, so I was all over the board. I picked a good card from every single color pretty much in my first 5 or 6 packs, and then slowly I saw a lot of good Feln cards and a lot of good shadow cards, and I was like, well, I guess we're ending up in Feln as usual. But yeah, this was a very solid deck. It had the perfect balance of removal, bombs, and early aggression and early units. And so let's get through all the cards, and I'll talk about sort of the synergies I was thinking of when building this deck, and also just the cards in general and what I think about them. So I got 2 Dark Returns. Dark Return I actually really like. It's not really a card I'd pick early on in the packs, obviously, unless I for sure have nothing else to pick in those packs, which is usually unlikely, but still sometimes you end up with those packs anyways, because Dark Return allows you to play really aggressively, and when you're a lot of the time in draft, you end up trading just 1-for-1 with your opponent's creatures. It can tell you quite a bit about your opponent's hand as well. If your opponent may have ended up with like not many early game creatures, and you end up trading with one of their early drops, you're able to get your early drop back and make it even stronger. And you can get a lot of value, especially when you're playing with flyers and stuff like that. It's really good because removal is not super common in draft, obviously. So if they use a good removal spell on one of your flyers, you can get that back for 1 mana and make it stronger. So totally counters that play almost. Not to mention, it works great with Haunting Scream. So the trick with that, if you're new to the game, Haunting Scream says, play a unit with 4, cost 4 or less from the void, it gets charged and flying, sacrifice it at the end of the turn. So that works really well with your infiltrate creatures. Obviously, the big combo is with Gorgon Fanatic. But other than that, let's say, for example, I had a Desperado, and my opponent killed it off. Next turn, I Haunting Scream it back. I maybe get the Infiltrate trigger off. I kill one of their creatures, and I have to sacrifice it at the end of my turn. Now, Haunting Scream applies charge and flying to that creature. So in the graveyard, Desperado is going to have flying and charge. So I can use Dark Return to actually get that back, make it a 4/3 with flying, charge, and infiltrate, kill an enemy unit, which is crazy good value for 3 power. So it will keep the flying and charge once it goes back in the graveyard. So that's something to keep in mind with Dark Return. So Dark Return, I think, is really, really good. And yeah, not much to say there. I think it works great. Especially when I am including Devours. So I can Devour something just to draw through my deck and then Dark Return it back so I don't lose too much. Lose tempo, but still keep most of my cards. One Direfang Spider, just a really solid card in draft. I mean, it keeps your opponent from swinging with one of their big creatures. It can give you a lot of information about your opponent's hand. It also baits out removal, which can protect your flyers and stuff like that. If your opponent wants to start pushing damage through, they have to find some way to kill this. Works great as a trick with Levitate as well to kill flying Aegis units or just flying units in general. Speaking of Levitate, I only got one. I would have liked to have another Levitate because we had so many good Infiltrate land units like Desperado and Gorgon Fanatic. But overall, one Levitate's fine. I mean, Levitates are a great way to cycle through your deck. This card also synergized well with one of our bombs, which is Psionic Savant. And one of our win conditions, actually, too. But yeah, not much to say there. It can also trick on the land units. Like I said, tricking the land units to kill something in the air is really, really good. Rapid Shot, I pretty much think of this as removal when I'm drafting, because normally you're just going to be playing really aggressively with your early drops. If they want to block with one of their larger units, they're going to have to take a chance that you may have Rapid Shot. If not, you're able to just get more aggression in. It works great with early lifesteal units like Cabal Cutthroat, or Reckless something. The 3/3 for 3 with lifesteal and Shadow. I can't for the life of me remember what the name is. But lifesteal creatures work great with Rapid Shot. Gets you a bunch of life, potentially kill something as well. And can also be lethal. My 7th win, actually, I got lethal with Rapid Shot. Twilight Raptor is just a great 1-drop. Getting a 2/2 flyer for 1 is crazy good value for 1 power. Obviously requires the double influence, but I never had a problem casting it early on. Usually I ended up playing it turn 2 because we don't have any dual lands obviously in the deck. But that's, getting a 2/2 flyer for 2 is still perfectly fine, and it works great with Dark Return. Getting a 3/3 flyer for 1 power is crazy good. 1 Annihilate, removal is highly sought after, and getting as unconditional removal as you can makes it even better. Most of the units you're going up against in draft are going to be single faction, so it does hit plenty of things. And it's fast, which is great. 2 Cabal Cutthroats to fill out our 2-drops. I actually really like it. It's a great way to help race against your opponent. And yeah, it works really well with Dark Return. Being able to trade with like a Yeti Snowslinger early on or something, and then getting a 3/3 for lifesteal, 3/3 with lifesteal for 2 power. Just a really good 2-drop in draft, because a lot of the time you are going to be getting into racing situations with your opponent. Going swing for swing sometimes, and Cabal Cutthroat can make that much harder for your opponent to get back from. 2 Devours is, I think, really good in this deck, because I have a lot of units where late game I don't really need them anymore, and it also can help counter removal. Now, it doesn't really counter removal in the sense of stopping that removal from happening. What I mean by that is, let's say my opponent uses a Execute or even like Annihilate or any removal spell on one of my creatures. I can Devour it to make them use up that card and use up that removal for not really any value, since I devoured it myself, and I get 2 cards and 2 health on top of that, so I'm gaining card advantage on them. So Devour is really good for that. Devour also works well in just drawing through my deck. Not much to say there. A lot of the time as well, I actually Haunting Scream back Yeti Snowslinger to get the Infiltrate trigger off to get a snowball, and then just Devour it at the end just to get more value, because it's going to get sacrificed anyway because of Haunting Scream, right? So might as well use Devour to draw through my deck and get some more cards. Haunting Scream, I would have liked another one, obviously, because we were able to get 2 Gorgon Fanatics and a Desperado. So some really good Infiltrate triggers for that. But Haunting Scream is just crazy good. Can potentially get you lethal. Works great with Infiltrates as like Gorgon Fanatic or Desperado or Serpent Trainer, because those are cards that are pretty highly baited, removal bait, essentially. Like, these are kinds of cards where your opponent is going to want to use removal on them. So being able to get value out of them through Haunting Scream is really, really good. Also synergizes well with Dark Return, like I mentioned before. And yeah, not much to say there. It also is a good way to get trick lethal if you have good buffs in your deck. Like, for example, if I Haunting Scream back a Gorgon Fanatic or Desperado or pretty much any of my creatures, because a lot of them are 4 cost or less, and then use Rapid Shot on one of them, like that's 6 plus damage usually, and can potentially get lethal from there. One Lightning Strike is just a great common removal spell, deals well with weapons, like if your opponent ended up drafting some sort of Icarias or something like that. It's a great way to kill off that stuff, and especially since if they have a weapon, it does deal damage to them, so it even adds to some aggro type strategies. But overall, just a good trick removal spell to have. One Scavenger Vulture, just a good flyer. I mean, it's just a flyer. I mean, not much to say there. It's gonna usually be a 2/1 for 2. Dies to a lot of stuff, but hey, it's a flyer that can still put a lot of pressure on your opponent. One Second Sight, it synergizes well with one of our late game win conditions, which is Psionic Savant, and draws through our deck to look for answers because we have a lot of good removal in the deck, and not much to say there. It's just it's good in the right deck. I don't think I draft it highly, but this was pretty late in the draft, and it worked well with quite a few of our cards. Wild Cloud Snake is a great flyer. Like if you're going with a flyer strategy and Primal or Feln or whatever, it can get out of hand crazily. It's another good unit to bait out removal. And when you're playing with Dark Return, it allows you to play these kinds of creatures pretty easily, because even if they get removed, you can just Dark Return them back and make them bigger. Since a lot of these high-valued threats are pretty low-costed, you're not losing a lot of tempo. Like if I play it turn 2, for example, my opponent uses a Torch on it, I'm fine with that because Torch would be better against a Gorgon Fanatic that's Haunting Screamed or something like that, and I can just play Dark Return, get my Wild Cloud Snake back, and that's that. It also works well with Haunting Scream. It's another minor synergy because playing Haunting Scream, it plays the unit with Charge and Flying, so it triggers Wild Cloud Snake. We had about 5 flyers, I think, in the deck, other than Wild Cloud Snake, which is a decent amount of flyers. It would be nice to get a few more, but overall, it's still a flyer that can potentially get bigger. I usually ended up having it like a 2/2 or 3/3, which is still perfectly fine for a flyer for 2 power. 2/2 Yeti, 2/2 for 2 Yeti Snowslinger, great 2-drop just to fill out your 2-drops if your opponent doesn't have a way to block it or kill it off early on. Getting that snowball is extremely good. It can kill off weak flying units. It can kill off anything with 1 health left. It makes blocking with your creatures. It makes blocking your creatures a little tougher sometimes because your opponent might know you have a snowball on hand, so they don't want to leave anything with 1 health. Also pops Aegis, and in the rare circumstances, can get you lethal. 1 Amethyst Acolyte, pretty much think of it as removal for weak units, anything with 1 health, of course. It can also slow down your opponent's damage if you're in a pinch, and also make trades a little better for you. Cobalt Acolyte, extremely good common. If you're playing any infiltrate strategy, it's just a high prioritized thing to draft. Gets your infiltrate triggers through, but also it's just permanent flying, so making something like a Horse Snatcher or a Direwood Rampager flying, that's a pretty big threat that your opponent is going to have to deal with. So can give a lot of your good land units flying. Like I even give like Cabal Cutthroat flying as well, because 2 damage in the air, that gives you 2 life. Every turn, it's going to make it really hard for your opponent to race. 1 Desperado, just extremely good if you can get the trigger off. Makes blocking really hard for your opponent. So again, it can tell you a little bit about your opponent's hand. If your opponent is leaving units back, well, it's very unlikely they have removal in their hand. Otherwise, they probably would have used it on Desperado, because Desperado is definitely something that you want to kill, because normally when you play something like Desperado, you're going to have ways to try and get it through. So your opponent is going to want to kill it off before you can actually use like Levitate or Ghost Form, for example, or anything like that to get it through. 1 Execute, just great removal, and adds to more aggression against your opponent's health. Not much to say there. And 2 Gorgon Fanatics. Getting 2 of these is great. It's again similar to Desperado. Your opponent is going to leave stuff behind to block it, or they're going to use removal on it. It's just a crazy good card in draft, Getting 3 health and 3 cards and deal 3 damage to your opponent, being able to get that through is crazy, crazy good. Combos well with Haunting Scream, of course, and also we can get it through with cards like Cobalt Acolyte and Levitate. 1 Polymorph, just premium removal. Not much to say there. Just unconditional removal that deals with Entomb effects or anything with a really annoying ability is great. Doesn't work as well with stuff with weapons, because the 1/1 frog that it gets turned into will still have the weapons equipped. So that can be sometimes a little awkward, but it does reduce the power level of that card, obviously, but not much to say there. Just really, really good removal. Serpent Trainer is one of the best 4-drops for common in blue. Getting 2/2/2 flyers potentially is great. You can use it with Haunting Scream to get the Infiltrate trigger off and still keep the 2/2 Hatchling. The 2/2 Hatchling is a good target for Devourers if you want to draw through your deck and you don't need the 2/2 flyer. Not much to say there, just a really good draft card for 4-drop. Psionic Savant is one of our win conditions. Late game, it's a card where you can just place on the board, and if your opponent doesn't have a way to deal with it, it's going to get huge very, very quickly, especially when we have a lot of draw effects in our deck. So, for example, Gorgon Fanatic, if it gets its trigger off, buffs it by 3. We have Second Sight, which buffs it by 2. We have Levitate, which gives it an extra buff, and we have Devour that buffs it by 2. There's a lot of ways that we can make Psionic Savant bigger, and having any flyer that can be a 3/3 or higher is a really, really good way to start taking over the game, and it's just going to get bigger. So it's another good way to, because we have a lot of good targets early on that baits out removal. So every time I played Psionic Savant, it was usually once people didn't really have any cards in their hand, and it was fairly safe. If not, it's just going to draw out more removal for, like, Horse Snatcher Bat and Direwood Rampager to get through. Direwood Rampager is just another endgame bomb. I ended up drafting 3 of these because 2 of them were just the last things in the pack. But not a great card, but it is still just an endgame bomb that you can, because we have such good removal in our deck, if we're able to just keep the board relatively clean, Direwood Rampager is usually going to be the biggest thing on the board mid to late game. And also it goes well with Cobalt Acolyte. Making a 6/4 flyer is much more threatening than a 6/4 land unit. Not much to say there. It's just a good way to start pressuring your opponent even more. Horse Snatcher Bat is just another flyer to trigger Wild Cloud Snake, but also it's just a really solid threat in the air. It does die to Torch, sadly, but, so does pretty much the rest of our deck. And a lot of these cards are going to draw out Torch if our opponent is going to have it anyways. So having a flying 5/3 is crazy good, but the fact that it has quick draw means you can pretty much just keep swinging with it, and your opponent's going to have very little things on the board, especially in the air, that are going to be able to deal with it. So they're really going to need removal straight up. Otherwise, you could just keep swinging for 5, and it's really, really tough to block. So that is the deck. This deck performed extremely well. As you can see, it just has some crazy good uncommons. Like we had a ton of good uncommons. Horse Snatcher Bat, Psionic Savant, Polymorph, 2 Gorgon Fanatics, a Desperado, Haunting Scream, 2 Cabal Cutthroats, Annihilate, Twilight Raptor. Like I would say, almost half of our deck was made of uncommons, and just good quality ones too. So this deck performed exactly how I wanted it to. I didn't expect the 7 wins, but going 7-1, hey, it's always a great way to start off the new year and new season. Oh, I also drafted a Amethyst Monument, which is a great way to just get your influence going, and also just late in the game, it's a 3/3 lifesteal, which goes well with Cobalt Acolyte. Not the greatest monument. The Tie Monument, I think, is the best one, having it being a 5/5 overwhelm for 5. But the lifesteal is still can be really, really relevant later in the game when you're racing your opponent. So that is the deck, guys. Let me know what you guys think of the deck, and let me know how your guys' drafting is going in the new year so far. But until next time, guys, I'm going to make sure to get another Decking Around episode once I'm fully better. Make sure you check out all the links in the description below. I would really, really appreciate it. And I'll make sure to start streaming more Eternal as well. I do want to start streaming more this year. I'm going to try to stream as much as I can. I'm not going to challenge I'm not going to set a challenge for myself, but I do want to stream every day for at least an hour and a half. Obviously, other obligations and sickness and stuff like that come first. But if I have the time, if I have no other obligations, I'm going to stream every day for at least an hour and a half. That is my goal for 2017, because I do want to take streaming a little more seriously this year, because I had some good success last year growing my channel, and I just want to increase that amount. But until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys had a great night, day, or morning wherever you are, and I will talk to you guys soon.